excited to be up now and be talking about how to achieve work-life balance. I think this is one of the biggest challenges coming into tax season that we have is how do we get that balance of not just work, but also life, particularly for our team. And I always love to start these events with a quote, and this is one of my favorite quotes from Richard Branson. A company's employees are its greatest asset and your people are your product. And I always love to start with this because this is often something that we forget or we don't have time to really focus on during tax season. A company's employees are its greatest asset and your people are your product. At the end of the day, we are in the leverage business. We rely on our people to get the output. And without our people, we don't have really a business. We are a service-based business. And I wonder how much we can automate technology. People are always going to be at the center of everything we do. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today. So for those that I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, my name is Nick Sinclair. I'm the founder of Toa Global and a company called AB2 Institute. So for 12 years, I owned and ran a financial planning and accounting business. And then I set up my own back office and built out what is now Toa Global. It's never meant to be what it is, but we're a talent solutions business with close to 3,500 people across the Philippines and South Africa, as well as US and Australia. And we also service, obviously, the Canadian, New Zealand, and UK markets. So a lot of experience in running and also assisting accounting and bookkeeping firms to be able to help grow and become more productive. So I'm going to jump straight into a poll. I'm going to see if I can work this one out. Kevin, I don't know if someone can help me with this one. Maybe even just put it into the chat for now might be the easiest. So how confident are you going into tax season? Here we go. The poll's popping up. The first question here, how confident are you going into tax season? Are you very confident? Are you somewhat confident? Are you not confident at all? So if you just pop that one in, I always find this one an interesting one because a lot of people are not confident as opposed to being confident going into tax season. And it's something that for me is quite important that we are confident, but a lot of the times we're not. So how confident are you going into tax season? So we'll pop that one up and I'll keep scooting along while it does. The first thing I really talk about when we're looking at how do we give or achieve work-life balance during tax season, the first thing is that I want you to really, I suppose, picture the scene is, imagine a business, a repeatable business with the potential to extract yourself from the operations. So I want you to think about, is that something where you've got at the moment a business where you could just step back from it and it will run through tax season without your help, without you being involved? And if not, I want you to go to a place where you're imagining that you have a firm that is built so that it can just repeat. It's got clean process and systems. You can step out and not need to be involved in it. And why I want you to think about that is that we need to be thinking that way to be able to build it that way. Now, how's this even relevant for tax season, going into tax season now? It's something that we really need to look at. We've still got a few months. What can we implement now that's going to make this tax season better than last? What can we implement now that's going to make 2 tax seasons times better? And it's really looking at how do we improve what we're doing to really drive that performance. So one of the biggest things that I've already mentioned this in a quote from Richard Branson, which I love so much, is people are your biggest asset. But are your systems and process, is your business set up so that your people are your front and center, that everything you do revolves around your people? A lot of the time we say, no, it's revolving around our customers. Sometimes we say it doesn't even revolve around either. We're just busy. We don't have time to think about that. But at the end of the day, are you a people-focused business? Are your people driving your business forward? Because if they are, then I guarantee your customers will be getting a great experience. But we need to start looking at our businesses as a customer, as a people-first business. So the poll questions have popped up here, which is quite interesting. How confident are you going into tax season? 43% of you are very confident, which is interesting. 14% somewhat confident, and 43 are not confident. So well done for the ones that are confident. I don't often get it that high, which is good, in a good way. So I think the main thing that we need to really focus on is don't forget who you're working for. And customer experience is more important when you're busy than when you're not, because it's often the thing we forget about. So when I talk about people are your biggest asset, but then we need to build and do everything we do for our customers, because ultimately they are the ones paying our bills. They are the ones that are assisting us to grow and be in business. But a lot of times when we build our technology or we build our process, particularly the process for new technology, we don't think about it with a customer in mind. We think about it from what's it going to do for us internally. I always challenge firms when they come to us and we're talking about their businesses, how are you ensuring that your process is built for your customers? It's not built for you internally. So I want you to think about that for a minute. When you last implemented a piece of technology, did you update your process and your systems to make the customer experience process better? Or did you put your old process into the new technology? Or the third option is, did you redo the process for new technology, but not really consider the customer's experience during that journey? Now, different technology is going to be different. Some of it is just for internal use. Some of it doesn't even touch the customer experience. But we always need to be thinking with the customer lens on is this the best process for themselves? Is this the best process for our customers? Now, we've been doing a lot of this in the last 18 months through a digital transformation that we've been going through. And some of the process, when we looked at it, we're like, that is like really long, really complex. For us internally, it meets everything that we need. But for a customer going through this, it's probably not a great experience. So we've been continuously looking at how do we refine that with always having the customer experience in mind, being customer-centric and focusing on that, but also focusing on where can technology automate, where people don't need to be involved, and where can we double down on the human experience so that they feel a lot more human impact during that process, but automating where you can. And I think a lot of this comes down to is, does your firm have clear goals? I'll ask you to pop into the chat just a number one if you believe that your firm has strong, clear goals for the tax season that's coming up. Do you have strong goals? If you have strong goals, does every single individual that works with you have strong success metrics? Does everyone in your team know what success is on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and for the whole tax season? Does everyone know what success is as an individual and as a business? A lot of the time we have our revenue targets or we have our productivity targets, but what is success for me if I'm one of your accountants or bookkeepers working in your team? What does success look like? And what does success look like for the firm? And having very clear goals of what we're going to do and how we're going to get through this period and communicating that with everyone is something that I find so critical. At the end of the day, and this is one of the key things, is you only have 1,440 minutes in a day. How are you and your team going to use these? And is it prescribed? So if we take into account that we have 8 hours sleep, it's only 960. So my question is how does your team use their time? Is their time allocated? Is their workflow efficient? Are they going to be maximizing their time? One of the biggest challenges that we often find with firms is that accountants are doing things like administration. They're professional people. They went to study. They went to become professional accountants and bookkeepers. Doing administration work while they can do it, it's not the best use of their time. And I think this is one of the key points with this is, how do we maximize the time that our team have? How do we optimize it? how do we really optimize human performance? How do we get the most out of them so that they can leave work feeling successful, so that they can feel excited about what they're doing, as opposed to coming and just going, it's another day of tax season. I've got another 10 days, 10 weeks to go. How do we really build that in? The big question I always ask people is, how will your team have a normal life this tax season? So I want you to put in chat, remembering that 43% of the people that answered the poll earlier said that you're feeling very confident going into tax season. Pop into the chat, how will your team have a normal tax season? Pop into the chat, they will, if you think they will. Pop into the chat, no chance, it's tax season. So just put no or yes into the chat. I'm going to be very interactive during this. If anyone has any amazing ideas of what they've done so that they will have a normal life, pop it in and we'll try and cover these off later. But there's a lot of people saying they will not have a normal life in tax season. And that's perfectly fine if that's where your business is at. But one of the things we need to move towards, and this is something that may take 1, 3, 5, 7 years to do, is how do we move it so that it's not such an event? Now, you might be thinking, Nick, do you have any idea about tax? Because a lot of work comes in. The reality is yes. It's how do we build the capacity to be able to manage through these times. Now, I know a range of firms that have been working on this for years, that have been very focused around how do I build capacity, how do I automate and drive technology. And one of them, even last year, spent pretty much the whole tax season living in the snow while working, and their team worked a normal 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, no Saturdays, no Sundays. They were able to drive their team success. And my question to you, or my comment to you around this is, if you're competing for talent, and talent is one of the biggest challenges that we have, particularly now after the pandemic, it's got even worse than it was. And it will be for another 2 to 3 years. It's going to get worse before it gets better. If you're competing for talent, and they're having to come in and work excessive hours or long hours during tax season, versus a firm that promotes work-life balance, versus a firm that basically says, we'll progress your career, we'll train you, we'll develop you. We don't want you to be burning out. We want to be optimizing your performance. We've built our capacity. How are you going to compete for talent in that case? And this is something that a lot of you will probably know Brendan from social media. He is a client of ours, but this is something he popped up a couple of years ago that I absolutely loved when he did. And his comment around being a people-first business. And this is, I mean, if you read it, last fall, I made the decision to be a people-first business. As part of being a people-first is making sure that our staff can catch a breather. Most people are burnt out. So how did he do that? He increased the capacity within his team. He increased the capacity by 36%. He was able to do that, and that enables him to be able to grow and develop a larger team. Doesn't necessarily mean there's more cost, a significant cost increase, but it means he can really drive his people to optimize their performance, but without burning out during this next tax season. And I think this is one of the key things, particularly with now global resourcing. And we've been doing this for 9 years. The journey in Australia is pretty much most firms are on it. If you're not, then it's unusual these days. And in the US, we've seen this accelerate in the last 2 years. We've been in the US for 3.5 years, or US, Canada, for 3.5, 4 years now. And we've seen it really accelerate in the last, particularly 2 years during the pandemic, but even since then. This year, more and more firms are looking at how do we build global resources. Some of those global resources are more cost-effective than local people, which means that you can scale your team up. It doesn't mean you replace hiring locally. You're always going to need to be hiring and growing, but it's an addition to your team is really building out that structure. But one of the things is, if you want to get your team through tax season, you need to really look at your capacity. And that's obviously why people work so many hours. Capacity If you take a step back, a lot of the time it's the process systems and technology you're using, not as efficient as they potentially could be. So we're going to, I suppose, the big thing is having a very clear plan for your tax season workload. Planning is so critical in this process. Having structure. And this is the difference, I suppose, between when work comes in and just getting it done and it going in a list versus being very prescribed with your clients when you're doing their work. Having a very clear process to say, look, we've booked your work in to do it here during this period. Having all the information from them before that period, being able to start that work. So a lot of firms that I've seen do this really, really well typically have the whole tax season mapped out and their clients, when you're doing the client's work, is fully allocated. Now, I know what some of you are thinking because I've had this said to me before, that is a lot of work. And yes, it is, but it gives you very, very clear structure of how you're going to get through tax season when you have a very clear plan for your workload. Does it allow for significant new clients? Well, potentially not if you don't have the capacity. But having that structure and having that confidence going into tax season really enables you and helps you to be able to drive through and get through it. It gives you certainty. Some of you may not want certainty. You might say, look, we want to take on a bunch of new clients. We're happy to do the hours. We're happy to go above and beyond that. And that's perfectly fine if that's what you choose. But if we want to make a change to our businesses, if we want to take ourselves out of the process, if we don't want to have to go through tax season like we have every year, what are the things that we need to do now to improve tax season in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, in 4 years' time? It's having that very clear plan to be able to get through it. The first step, in my opinion, where I've seen firms really, really doing this, and we deal with our largest firm is a $1.6 billion accounting firm, right down to a sole practitioner and everything in between. I've seen big firms, I've seen small firms, and I've seen everything in between implement a process around this. But it needs structure. It needs time to actually be able to put it in place. But then it also needs training of your clients for them to actually be able to drive and implement this. Meaning, if they don't play their part and give you the information, their job gets moved. And that requires some training, because a lot of the times we find firms, clients are not the ones that, they're the ones that need to be trained on what they need to give you, how they need to give it to you, and how quickly they need to give it to you. The big question I always ask, and this is something that I want you to think about, is do you have the capacity, meaning the people, to do all of your work this tax season? Do you have enough people to do the work? So I want you to pop into the chat a number 1 if you think you have enough people to get through tax season, meaning you have enough people to do all of the work that you've either currently got from your known clients or from what you're expecting to get in during tax season. And put a number 2 if you don't have the capacity. So it's good to see some people being honest, and I love that comment, Kendra, not even close. So these are all, there's a lot of number 2s in there. I haven't seen a 1 yet. So my question to you is, if we're going into it knowing we don't have capacity, how are we going to manage that with our people? How are we going to manage those expectations with our clients? If you're comfortable just going in, going, yep, great, we're just going to do the hours, that's a plan for this tax season. But what do you need to do in the next 12 months then? So next tax season, you don't have to do that. And I think it's really about putting in those plans. You may not be able to find staff. You might not be able to get capacity for this tax season. But if you can't, have a plan to get through this tax season and make sure that you don't ever have to go through this again in the future. And I think that's one of the key things, is that we need to start thinking more long-term. With our strategic planning that we do as a business every single year, and I used to do this with my accounting and planning firm for the 12 years I had it, we always do our strategic planning well in advance. So we run on a calendar year. So our strategic planning was done back in September and October for a January next year start. One of the things we're always thinking about is, what are the people we need for the following year? How do we drive that people strategy next year to make sure by the time we need them, they're up and running, they're trained, they know our business, and they're able and capable to do their role. So that means we'll bring them on throughout the year next year, depending on when we need them. Some of them we need immediately, but a lot of them, our people strategy is really around how do we transition the business to be the way that we want it to be run in 5 years' time, and what are the steps we need to do that? And I'll give you an example. So when I had my firm, one of the things that I realized myself very early in my career is I'm not an operations guy. I love being in front of clients. I love communicating. I loved giving the advice and the strategy. I didn't like doing the other stuff. That was not what I was skilled at. So we basically built a plan. I built a plan where I brought in a general manager to run the day-to-day of the business. Now, at the start, I couldn't afford it. The decision I had to make was, if I want to be able to get freedom from having to do the operational part, which I know that isn't my strength, yes, I can do it, but it's not my strength. I'm going to have to sacrifice something. And for me, I had to sacrifice the amount that I was making for the business so that I could bring this role in. It was a significant role, but I knew that the time freedom that that would give me. And I knew that that time freedom would give me the ability to grow the business more. And the big thing with that is making that decision that in 3 years' time, I don't want to be doing this. So if I can employ that person now, bring that role forward, I'll take a short-term sacrifice, but for a long-term benefit. It means that we can start to progress through that. So we're 9 years into TOA Global. I've been able to, 4.5 years ago, I transitioned out of running the business. I have a CEO, we have a full executive team. I still work within the business. I arguably probably work more hours than I ever have, but I love what I do because I'm only doing the things that I'm good at doing. I'm doing the things where I know that I make the impact, as opposed to doing the things that I have to do because I have to do them. So think about this. If you're a manager or a partner or a firm owner that on today's event, are you still doing tax work, or are you driving your team to do the tax work? Are you still doing the how rather than going, who should I be employing to do this? And that's a great book that I read many years ago, which was around, instead of thinking, how can we get more tax returns out? Change the thinking to go, who in your business can get more tax returns out? How do I enable the team? How do I support the team to really drive the business to optimize performance? But a lot of the time, it's us doing the work. So I'm going to skip through because this X poll was answered. But one of the big things that we talk about in how do we actually get success is having the right team structure. And team structure is so important. And I use this framework of the right people doing the right work at the right time and ultimately the right cost. When I talk to firm owners and I come in and talk to firms, one of the biggest challenges we typically find is partners are sitting in front of their computers for 5 to 7 hours a day. A significant chunk of that is doing emails and responding to correspondence, as opposed to, in my opinion, a partner's job is not doing that. A partner's job is a rainmaker. It's leadership. It's driving your team's performance. It's training them to help them become optimized to know what they're doing and to be able to train them so that they can continue to do a high level of work. It's to communicate with clients. It's to really add value to your clients. But yet, how many of us are buried sitting behind a computer, doing emails, correspondence? Now, when I talk about the right people doing the right work at the right time and at the right cost, there's things like that where I've had an EA for, call it now for the last 9 years, I've had the same EA. And in my financial planning and accounting firm, it was in the last 3 years that I had an EA. And they basically took away 2 to 3 hours of my time in managing my diary and managing my emails. I don't have to worry about that. I can just worry about the ones that I need to worry about because they'll escalate those to me and say, look, these 10 clients, you need a response. And I'll pick up my phone. You probably can't see it here, but I'll pick up my phone. We use Microsoft Teams. I dictate an audio file note to Ethel, my EA. And I can go through my emails twice a day within about 15 minutes. And I can just basically dictate the responses. She gets them sent off. Any actions that need to happen, any follow-ups that need to happen, she needs to do that. And we've got a bunch of clients that have now been able to implement similar strategies. But one of the things that I typically find is, oh, but I need to answer that, or I need to do that. You only need to because you haven't built a process and system to get someone else to do it. Where is your time best utilized? One of the things that when I talk at a lot of events, I have a lot of managers come up after saying, Nick, you're 100% right with one question. And I say that they're the ham in the sandwich. I say it in not so nice terms, but the partners are typically pushing work down to the managers, and the juniors and everyone else reporting them is pushing it up, and they're jammed in the middle. So a manager, everyone aspires to get to a manager level in their career, but all you find is that you're managing up and down. You're managing problems from the partner, you're managing problems from the bottom, and you're trying to get this work out. And a lot of the times you're just stuck there buried in more work rather than seeing, which you should be at that level, more clients. So how is your team structure set up? Do you have people doing what we call the routine and mundane work, which is process orientated? Do you have a delivery team that are just producing the tax returns? Do you then have a customer experience team, which is then communicating with the clients? And I always say that the pyramid of accountants, when you look at it, the bottom of it should be your global teams and your local teams that are just producing the work, doing the tax work. As you move up the chain, as you move into senior accountants and managers and partners, more and more of your time should be in front of clients and communicating with clients and less actually doing the work. But I want you to think about that. How much work are you doing versus how much work are you leading a team where they are doing? And a lot of the time, what we find is that the team structure is just not right because we've got seniors that are doing work that technically is below their pay grade, but they're the ones that are doing it because that's the way the process has worked out. And we really look at this structure of having the right people doing the right work at the right time. And like I mentioned before, it's really who rather than how. As a business owner, one of the things that I think about every day is who should be doing this rather than how do we do this? And that was a mindset change for me. Every 3 months now, I review everything that I'm doing. I review the 3 rocks that I should be focusing on. I've got 3 key things in my role that I should be doing. And if I'm doing things above and beyond that, my first question is who should be doing this rather than how? And when I've got the right who, then we can really optimize the process to be able to drive their efficiency. Because what I'm wanting from my team is to really optimize the human performance. I want to run a high-performing team. It's like a high-performing sporting team. You give them great facilities. You give them the right tools to succeed. And a big part of what I always talk about when I talk about accounting firms and I'm relating it to business, imagine giving a professional basketball team a flat basketball to dribble. It just drops and stops. It doesn't bounce back up. So if it's optimized at the right pressure, it'll bounce perfectly. You give them the right tool to succeed. Now, if you relate that back to an accounting and bookkeeping business, that's the same as having the right technology in place and the right process in place. One of the easiest ones that I say is from a bookkeeping space is the easiest to explain is if you're still collecting receipts and items like that from your clients when there's technology like HubDoc and Dext, that is not optimizing process to optimize human performance. You've now got people involved in something that technology can do. Have you really looked at your process to go, how do we optimize this so that we can optimize our people? Because too many times when people start building teams with us, they start with a lower level work. They start with a repeatable and routine and mundane, repeatable work. As their team grow over time, they'll be doing the exact same work as you would with a senior locally, but that does take time to grow. And I look at some of the work they're doing and I'm like, technology could be doing this. People are paying us to get people when technology could be doing this work. It's low value work that technology can be doing so that we can lift even the people that you get through us up the value chain so that they are doing the right work. But the first thing you need to be looking at within the business lens is who do we need rather than how do we do this? Do we have the right team structure? Do we have the right people? Are our professional staff, the accountants, the bookkeepers, are they doing level of work that is equal to the skills that they have? Or are they also doing administration and other work that is not really at the level that they should be doing? And I think that this is a big one for me that I think is often lost during tax season. I know that in my early days in running the business, this is something that we didn't even think about. I'll be honest about it. We're more worried about getting the work out, getting the bills out, and trying to help our clients that way than really trying to create a customer experience. And I think the first thing before you can even think about giving a customer experience is you need to get the customer service systematized. The difference between good firms and great firms is when they systematize things to systematize an experience that your customer has with your firm. So I want you to think about this for a minute. If you are a customer of your own business, what experience would you be having with your business? Or are they just getting a service because that's technically what they paid for? They paid for a tax return, they're getting a tax return. What's the experience and feeling that they get from working with you? And I'll use this example. There's a lot of accountants that put out that they are so busy, and I completely understand that you are. But are you putting out that you're so busy that your customers don't want to ring you for advice when they need it because they know that you won't answer, because they know that you don't have time, or that they'll get billed for the 6-minute increment they talk to you? What experience do your customers feel when they work with you? If that's how you want to run your firm, that's perfectly fine. But always take a step back and think about, how is my customer going to be feeling during this process? Is it one that they're going to be raving and excited about, which means they're going to refer other people to you? Or is it something that they're like, you know what? I don't feel great about this. It's a grudge purchase. I'm paying. I don't really want to, and now I've got to pay tax as well. Somehow that's always our fault. I always laughed when I was an accountant about that, when clients got angry because they had to pay tax, but that was our fault that they had a good year. Tax is a good thing in some ways. But when we're looking at the customer experience, it's often hard to leave an accountant, but it's becoming easier and easier now. So being able to give bad service to people is not really something that clients will put up with these days. There's a lot more options. So I want you to think about, and again, this may be not something that you can fix right now, but what can you do now for next tax season? Not the one coming, the one after. What can you do for 2 years' time, 3 years' time? How do you create a customer experience by first customizing and building process and systems to give that experience? And I think the key thing that I always say to senior leaders within firms is the secret to removing yourself from the day-to-day business is systems. The secret to getting the right people doing the right work at the right time and ultimately at the right cost, meaning value to you and the customer, is driving your systems and process. But a lot of the time we don't take the step back because we've got to go backwards to go forwards. But if you want a repeatable business that runs without you, then we really need to look at how do we build the systems and process, and how do we get the right people doing the right work? And how do we have enough capacity so that when we're going into things like tax season, we're feeling confident and comfortable and our team are excited, as opposed to going, how are we going to get through this? So how do we actually do this? By reducing time dramatically. And a big one is getting all the information before you're starting. It's putting self-imposed deadlines and communicating these to teams and clients. This is what I was talking about before, having that planned workflow. Just one job at a time being worked on, uninterrupted time, not trying to juggle multiple jobs. Productization of what you offer your clients so that it is, we offer product A, B, or C. You can either just get the tax returns, you can get the tax return and the bookkeeping. What are the products that you sell and how do you bundle them together so that you can have clear systems and process so that everyone fits within the structure as opposed to everyone being bespoke and different? And how do you really drive technology for both internally as a firm and for your client? And this will, I can guarantee, significantly reduce the time if you do this for every single client. Gather all the information before starting. Self-imposed deadlines. Everyone's aware of what they are. One job at a time. Productizing where things are systematized and everything's consistent. So how do we get to there? And this is the big one, is around, it's the stages of workflow. You got preparation, you got setup, you got doing, you got selling, and you got internal. Different people should be doing each one of those steps. The setup work is administration. The preparation potentially is the admin team. The doing is the professional team. The selling is your senior managers and your partners. And then the internal process restarts again. But do you have your process and your workflow broken up into these different stages? Or is it a job comes in, someone's allocated, they pick it up and they take it from start to finish and they're chasing the client along the way for the information? How much structure do you have within your business? Because structure will set you free. Process and systems will drive freedom within the firm. And there's great technologies out there like Carbon and Jetpack Workflow that automate and drive a lot of this for you. It gives you the reporting, it gives you the analytics, it gives you the capacity planning. But the biggest thing people say to me, oh, but I need to invest in the technology. You know, it's too expensive. I'm like, well, how much time do you need to save just to cover it? Not a lot. And is that visibility and actually having consistency going to optimize the performance of the firm, meaning you're going to get a better return anyway? So it's what technology are we implementing to really drive those stages of workflow? That then allows us to really manage the human performance. And I started today's conversation by saying people are our biggest asset. But how do we really optimize their human performance? How do we get the best out of them? How do we help them to be successful and grow and advance their career? A lot of the time, we don't necessarily thinking about that. And a big one is really around managing your team's time and workload. The more senior they are, the better they should be at this, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're great at it. How do you help assist that? How do you help drive that? The big one for me during tax season is, how do you drive your team's energy? How excited are you for this tax season? What messaging are you giving to your team? You're coming into one of the busiest periods of the year. Are you excited about that? Are you building your team up? Or are you like, I don't know how we're going to get through this. We don't have enough people. There's tons of work coming. Like, are you taking a really positive approach into tax season? Or are you taking one that's, you know, reflecting on your team, that they're sitting there going, great, we've got 60-hour weeks coming up. I'm going to be working 6 days a week. How do you really drive that energy and excitement so that people feel excited about it? And there's a lot of little things that you can do this tax season. It's not too late to try and solve it. And it could be simply organizing something like yoga, meditation, or an activity 1 day a week, not for a whole day, but it could be simply, look, at every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, we're going to just, the clients, everyone knows we're shutting off. We've got an hour where we're just going to do meditation or we're going to do yoga every single week. What's one activity that you can do to give your team a refresh and a reset every single week? These are little things that you can implement now that will change the output and performance of your team. It's amazing how little things can make such a significant difference. The big thing that I would be saying to my team, and this is something that I used to do when I had my firm, is schedule days off for your team during tax season. Yes, that sounds absolutely crazy. We are busy, and that is the busiest period of the time. Why would I give anyone time off? Because you need to optimize human performance. If people are burnt out, if they're tired, they might work 12-hour days, but they're not going to be as productive and efficient as they should be. Schedule throughout tax season for your team to have a long weekend or a couple of long weekends throughout that period. I can guarantee you their output will be significantly higher than if they're just working significant hours. I know my burnout point is 10 weeks. I've learnt that the hard way over many years. So I know that I need to have at least 10 days off after every 10 weeks. But I know that I can optimize what I do during those 10 weeks. Now, not everyone in your team, and I've had to learn this the hard way because I had the expectation that if I can do it, why can't my team run for 10 weeks and work 60, 70, 80 hours a week? But not everyone's the same. What's the point where your team member needs a break and refresh? And it could be simply every 4 weeks, they need a long weekend. But if you give them that, their output is going to be more significant than the time that they have off. How do you schedule days so that you can make sure that your team are aware that you care and that you want to help optimize their performance during this really busy period of time? Yes, it's great to give them leave before and after, but how do you help them be really efficient during that time? Another way to do it is to set very clear KPIs. And I said this earlier around if everyone knows what success is going into tax season for themselves and for the firm, then it makes it a lot easier other than we've just got a lot of work that we've got to get out. How do you make it fun? How do you gamify tax season and make it fun? Bring that energy into it. And you can definitely do that. I've seen firms do this amazingly well. What are some of the ways that you can do that? You can have things like a chocolate wheel. Every time you finish a job, spin the wheel. If it's virtual, you can do it virtually. If you're in office, then you can do it in office. But there's things like a chocolate wheel where you can have different prizes. If they're on time and on budget with their job, they get to spin the wheel. If they're ahead of time, they get to spin it twice. Ringing the bell or a gong. Every time our team create a new career or have a win, we've got a bell for a certain win and we've got a gong for another. So think about in our office in Australia, for example, there's about 42 people. Every time someone has success, depending on what their job is, the receptionist has different success, obviously, to the leader of the country through to the executives. We either hear the bell or the gong going. Now that brings energy to the whole office. We do that in our North American team in Fort Worth and in San Diego. We do that in the Philippines with our teams there. We bring excitement to it. How do you build games into the process? How do you have prizes? Now, all of this stuff, you might be thinking, Nick, you've gone absolutely batty crazy. But if you want to bring energy and you want to have fun during this process, it makes what is really, really hard work a better experience. How do you help bring healthy food into your team members? And how do you make sure that they have a break every day? How many of us have done this over the years? And I'm still guilty of it now, is that we just eat when we're working. If you're at work from home, it means you're eating at your computer. If you're in an office, it means you're eating at your desk and computer. How about you just shut your office? A lot of great firms that work with us, they shut their office for a lunch period, even during tax season. This next 45 minutes, we're offline, everyone's having lunch. We're doing that together. How do you build the relationships with your team and make sure that they're okay during these tax seasons? So there's a lot that we can actually do to help get us through the initial tax season, being the one coming. But I challenge you to start thinking about the one after that, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. What's your 5-year strategy to know that the business you have today is going to be significantly better in 5 years' time, so that your team know that, yes, during the next tax season, I'm talking to the 45% of you that said you don't have enough, you're going to struggle to get through this tax season and you don't have enough capacity right now to get through it. You need to communicate with your team that that's where it is, but you need to still be excited. You need to still bring the energy. But what you do need to commit and promise to them is that this will be the last one. This will be the last one that is this bad. We're setting a 5-year plan that we're going to build system and process and really drive technology so that our whole business can be optimized and that we can maximize people's performance and optimize their performance. But ultimately, in future tax years, we will have enough capacity and we'll have the right process and systems to drive a great customer experience to the people that ultimately pay our bills. And we're going to do that by implementing a range of different initiatives within the business. If you communicate that with your team will be engaged and excited and get behind it. I did that with my own firm. It took many, many years to get to where we wanted to do, but we were very prescriptive about doing it. We said no to tax time madness, and we built a business that was more driven to customer service and excellence. And we didn't have to work the crazy hours that we wanted to, or that we used to have to. And we choose to. I work a lot of hours now, but I love what I do. And I also have a lot of time off. So I balance that out. So work life is very different for everyone. And that's one thing that I wanted to really finish off with. For some people, it means dropping their kids at school and picking them up. For others, they want career progression. They're willing to do the work and the hours. But just because people are willing to do the work and the hours, it doesn't mean they should be doing the wrong type of work. How do you advance the careers of the people within your team and really drive their careers at a quicker rate than ever so that they can start to add more value to your clients, they can build more for your firm, and ultimately they can earn more personally and advance their career? How do we implement training and to really drive their performance, to really help them? Instead of taking 9 years to get to a manager, how do we do it in 4.5? How do we do it in 2 years? Now, I know that may sound crazy, but how do we help advance people's careers? And how do we make sure that at the end of the day, our customers are getting a great experience every time they deal with us? And a lot of that comes back to just structure, systems, process, right people doing the right work at the right time and the right cost. And the wonderful thing is that the pandemic's really fast track is this awareness that you can build a global team now. You can find the best global resources as opposed to just trying to struggle to find someone that's in your town or in your state. How do you build the capacity of your team so you've got the right people doing the right work at the right time and ultimately at the right cost? How do you automate and you really utilize the technology that you've got in place? Because it's great having this wonderful tech, but if you're not using most of it, and this is a stat that an owner of a technology in Australia said to me, he goes, I asked him, I said, Ron, you release new updates every 2 weeks, 3,000 updates a year, amazing technology. How much of your technology does the average firm actually use? And he said, Nick, they only use about 30% of it. So how do you really understand, and how do you really train, more importantly, your team to optimize the technology that you use and you have and you're paying for already so that you can get greater efficiencies with your team? You may not be able to get and change anything now for tax season. It may be too late for your firm, but implement some of these things to make sure that the most important asset within your business, your humans, are able to get through it, that they're excited by it, and that they can see that the next year is going to be a better year and that it's only going to improve and that they've got a strong career with you. Because there's a lot of firms now that are promoting work normal hours, go to the snow, work out of the snow for the tax season. You know, how do you compete with that if you don't change the way you do things? Talent is only going to get harder, not easier. How do we really, drive out the performance of our team, but also advancing their careers at the same time? So there's a lot of things that I've covered off today. And my last parting gift that I'm going to say to you is I've covered a lot, and thank you for investing your time in this session. And I know that the sessions prior to it. But if nothing changes, nothing changes. So my question to you is, what are you actually going to implement after today's session, after this one that I've covered off and the ones before me? What are the 4 things that you're going to implement that is going to change your business for the better coming into this tax season, but coming into the future years? Because if you don't do anything with the knowledge that you've learned today, you've spent an amazing four hours with us, but you haven't actually really implemented and driven anything to change your business and your life. So Kevin, hopefully that's right on time.
That's impeccable timing. That's a great session, as always. I always love listening to you speak, and the message you deliver, it resonates so much with myself. So hopefully it did with everybody else. So I definitely, everybody say thank you, because I'm greatly appreciative of the time that you spent kind of imparting your wisdom that you've had.
Thanks for having me, and apologies for the lateness.
Oh no, that could be us too. So I apologize as well.
Well, good. Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I hope everybody had a great time today. This was our last session. We've had a lot of great speakers, Nick Sinclair included. So I love that last comment. Hopefully people take something out of this, but hopefully they actually implement something too that betters themselves and their firms. So that's the goal of these sessions, is to improve everybody, lift everybody up. So thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody for attending. Thank you for spending your time, valuable time, looking at this kind of stuff. So thanks everybody, and have a great day.